What if the strongest fortresses on Earth are not defeated by bigger explosions, but by a weapon designed to change where the explosion happens? For decades, the underground battlefield followed one simple rule. Depth meant survival. A mountain was not just a mountain. It was armor. A layer of rock was not just geology. It was a shield built by time, engineering, and secrecy. Across the world, nations have invested billions into a single idea. If something important is buried deep enough, hidden well enough, and protected by enough concrete, it can survive the first wave of attack. But what happens when the weapon designed to defeat that logic finally arrives? What happens when the battlefield moves beneath the battlefield? Because the real war is no longer only fought on the surface. It is fought inside mountains, inside tunnels, inside the calculations of engineers who spent decades trying to build something that could survive a war they hoped would never come, and inside the calculations of another group of engineers trying to reach it. The weapon at the center of this story is not a fighter jet. It is not a missile. It is not a ship. It is the GBU-72 Advanced Penetrator. A weapon built around one question: can a bomb defeat a fortress that was designed specifically to stop bombs? On a satellite image, the mountains south of Isfahan appear almost ordinary. A landscape of rock-free terrain, natural formations stretching across central Iran. But zoom closer. The image begins to tell a different story. Small entrances cut into the mountainside. Road networks leading toward hardened areas. Structures positioned carefully against the terrain. What appears to be empty land becomes something else. A hidden military ecosystem. Because modern military power is not always visible. Sometimes the most important weapons are the ones you cannot see. Deep underground facilities represent one of the oldest strategic ideas in warfare: survival through concealment. If an aircraft is destroyed on a runway, it is gone. If a ship is sunk, it cannot fight. But a weapon hidden inside hundreds of feet of rock creates a different problem. The enemy knows it exists, but cannot easily reach it. And that changes the entire calculation. The question is no longer, can you destroy the target? The question becomes, can you reach the target before the target reaches you? For decades, underground military construction has been a response to one reality. Air power is powerful, but air power has limited precision. Guided weapons transformed warfare. Aircraft could strike individual buildings, command centers, radar systems, supply depots, but hardened underground facilities created a new challenge. The deeper a target goes, the more difficult the problem becomes. Because destroying something underground is not simply about explosive power. It is about physics. A weapon falling from the sky must survive the impact. It must maintain its shape while passing through concrete and rock. It must travel deep enough before detonating. And it must explode at exactly the right moment, too early, and the blast happens above the target, too late. And the weapon may bury itself beyond the intended point. The bomb is not fighting the bunker. It is fighting the laws of physics. And the bunker was built around those laws. This is where the underground battlefield becomes a contest between two forms of engineering. One side builds deeper, the other side builds smarter. For decades, underground facilities were designed around the capabilities of existing weapons. Military planners studied previous conflicts. They analyzed bunker busting technology. They calculated penetration limits. They asked, how deep can a weapon realistically reach? Then, they built just beyond that limit. That created a strategic illusion. The mountain did not need to be invincible. It only needed to be stronger than the weapons available at the time. But here is the problem. Military technology does not stand still. Every defensive advantage creates a new offensive challenge. Every shield creates a search for a sharper spear. And eventually, the question changes. Not, can a weapon penetrate this mountain? But, what happens when the mountain is no longer the strongest part of the defense? The GBU-72 represents that shift. Its purpose is not simply to create a larger explosion. That is the misunderstanding. A bigger bomb does not automatically solve an underground problem. The real challenge is getting the energy to the correct place. The weapon must arrive intact. It must survive extreme forces. It must continue moving after impact. And only then can it release its destructive power. The mountain is not defeated from the outside. The weapon must enter the mountain's world. This changes everything. Because the battlefield is no longer the surface. The battlefield is the space between the weapon and the target. But here is the contradiction. A weapon capable of reaching underground targets does not automatically guarantee victory. Because underground warfare is not just about destroying structures. It is about destroying systems. A missile facility is not only tunnels and concrete. It is production storage, maintenance, transportation, personnel, command networks. A single explosion can destroy equipment, but can it destroy the entire strategic network supporting that equipment? That is the question modern militaries must answer. Because weapons are not isolated objects. They are parts of larger systems. A missile underground is connected to factories above ground. Factories are connected to supply chains. Supply chains are connected to economies. And economies are connected to political decisions. The deeper battlefield extends far beyond the mountain. This is why underground facilities are so strategically important. They represent more than military hardware. They represent national confidence. They tell leaders, we can survive the first strike. We can continue fighting. We still have options. A hidden missile force is not only a collection of weapons, it is a psychological weapon. It creates uncertainty. It forces opponents to spend more resources, more aircraft, more intelligence assets, more time. The bunker itself becomes part of deterrence. The enemy does not have to believe the bunker is invincible. It only has to believe the bunker might survive. That possibility changes behavior. The part most people miss is that the GBU-72 is not just a bomb. It represents a change in strategic thinking. For decades, military planners operated under a familiar assumption. Some targets would always remain protected. Some locations would always be too difficult. Some weapons would always have a sanctuary. But new technology challenges that assumption. And when sanctuary disappears, strategy changes. A country that depends on underground protection must now ask a terrifying question. If the mountain can no longer guarantee survival, where does survival come from? But the story does not end with the weapon. Because the most important battle is not the moment when the bomb hits. The most important battle happens before that. Finding the target, understanding the target, knowing exactly where the valuable systems are hidden. Because an underground complex is designed to confuse. Multiple entrances, false locations, decoy structures, layers of uncertainty. The weapon may be powerful, but information decides where that power is applied. The missile is not the only target. The information protecting the missile is also a target. And this reveals the first major contradiction of the underground battlefield. Everyone sees the explosion. Everyone sees the mountain move. Everyone sees the weapon breaking through the surface. But the real battle began long before the impact. It began in satellites, looking down from space. In intelligence analysts studying patterns. In engineers calculating tunnel structures. In commanders deciding whether the information was reliable enough to commit an expensive weapon. The explosion is only the final second of a much longer war. A war fought through information. A war fought through technology. A war fought through patience. Because the future of warfare may not belong to the side with the biggest weapon. It may belong to the side that can find what is hidden, reach what was considered unreachable, and force an enemy to question whether its greatest protection was ever protection at all. But the GBU-72 raises an even bigger question. If underground fortresses can be defeated, what happens to the entire strategy built around hiding from superior military power? And if the mountain is no longer a shield, what becomes the next battlefield? Evrione thinks this battle is about a bomb breaking through a mountain. But the real battle is about something much larger. It is about whether modern militaries can still create safe places in an age where technology can see deeper, strike farther, and process information faster than ever before. The explosion is only the visible moment. The invisible war is the one that comes before it. The intelligence network that finds the target, the industrial system that creates the weapon, the logistics chain that delivers it, the political calculation that determines whether using it changes the balance of power. The mountain is only where the story becomes visible. The real battlefield exists everywhere. A hardened underground facility appears to represent strength, concrete's steel rock depth, but strategically it reveals something more complicated. A fortress does not remove vulnerability. It changes where vulnerability exists. For a country that relies on underground storage, the mountain becomes both a shield and a prison. Because the deeper a system is buried, the more it depends on everything above ground: ventilation, electricity, transportation, communication, maintenance, personnel. A missile hidden hundreds of feet underground may survive an attack, but the system required to operate that missile still reaches the surface, and that creates a new strategic problem. The bunker protects the weapon, but it cannot completely protect the network around the weapon. This is the hidden lesson of underground warfare. The target is rarely just the object. The target is the system that makes the object useful. A missile is not dangerous because it exists. It is dangerous because someone can store it, maintain it, launch it, and coordinate it. Destroying one missile changes very little. Disrupting the system that produces thousands changes the calculation. And this is where advanced penetrators become more than weapons. They become strategic messages. They tell an opponent, your assumptions about protection may no longer be accurate. The same principle applies far beyond underground missile facilities. Aircraft carriers, air bases, command centers, energy infrastructure, cyber networks. Every military system is built around assumptions. Every defense plan begins with a belief. This will survive. This will remain available. This will continue operating. But warfare is often the process of attacking those beliefs. The greatest advantage is not always destroying the enemy's capability. Sometimes it is forcing the enemy to doubt the capability exists. This changes the meaning of deterrence. Traditional deterrence depends on convincing an opponent, if you attack us, we can respond. But advanced precision weapons create a different question. Can you still protect what you depend on? If a country believes its most important weapons can be hidden safely, it may act more aggressively. If that confidence disappears, political calculations change. Leaders begin asking different questions. Can we continue escalation? Can we risk losing critical assets? Can we rebuild faster than they can destroy? The battlefield moves from physical destruction to strategic uncertainty. The part most people miss is that weapons like the GBU-72 do not operate alone. They are only one piece of a much larger transformation. The future battlefield is becoming a contest between systems. Sensors finding targets, artificial intelligence analyzing information, autonomous platforms creating pressure, precision weapons exploiting weaknesses. The weapon is important, but the network around the weapon is what creates strategic power. A bomb without intelligence is just an explosion. A bomb connected to a global information system becomes something different. It becomes a decision-making tool. This is why modern warfare increasingly combines four battles at the same time. The first is the military battle. Who can strike? Who can defend? Who can continue operating under pressure? The second is the technology battle. Who can create better sensors, better weapons, and faster decision cycles? The third is the economic battle. Who can replace losses? Who can maintain production? Who can sustain a long conflict? And the fourth is the geopolitical battle. Who can convince allies, influence opponents, and shape the political environment? A mountain facility may be destroyed in seconds, but the strategic consequences can last for years. Consider the energy dimension. A country does not maintain missile systems simply because missiles have military value. They are connected to regional influence. They affect negotiations. They influence how neighboring countries calculate risk. Energy markets react not only to what happens, they react to what might happen. A threat against shipping lanes, a threat against infrastructure, a threat against regional stability. These possibilities create economic pressure long before a missile is launched. That is why military power and economic power are now inseparable. A weapon can influence markets without ever being fired. But here is the problem. No weapon creates permanent dominance. Every advantage creates a response. The underground fortress created bunker, busting weapons. Precision weapons created deception. Satellites created camouflage. Artificial intelligence created new forms of electronic warfare. The cycle never ends. The battlefield is not a race toward a final weapon. It is a competition of adaptation. The side that adapts faster gains the advantage. This is the deeper meaning of the underground battlefield. For decades, the assumption was simple. If you cannot defend everything, hide what matters most. But advanced intelligence and precision strike technology are challenging that strategy. Visibility itself has become a weapon. Being found is becoming a vulnerability. A hidden facility is no longer only protected by distance. It is protected by how long it can remain unknown. And that changes military planning. The future fortress may not be the one built deepest. It may be the one that can move, adapt, deceive, and survive detection. The same lesson applies to every major military power watching this evolution. A weapon designed to defeat underground targets does not only threaten one country, it changes how every country thinks about hardened infrastructure. Where should command centers be located? How much should be invested in fixed facilities? How much should rely on mobility? How much secrecy is enough in an era of satellites, drones, and artificial intelligence? These are not questions for one battlefield. They are questions for the next generation of warfare. And this is why the mountain matters, not because it represents one explosion, but because it represents the end of an assumption. For generations, nations believed that enough depth could create enough security. The deeper the bunker, the stronger the protection. But modern warfare is increasingly proving something different. Protection does not disappear. It moves from concrete to information, from walls to deception, from physical distance to strategic uncertainty. The strongest defense may no longer be the one that can absorb the most damage. It may be the one that can adapt before the damage arrives. The question is no longer who has the deepest bunker. The real question is who can survive when every battlefield above ground and below ground becomes visible, connected, and vulnerable. Because the next great military competition may not be decided by who builds the strongest fortress. It may be decided by who understands that every fortress has a weakness, and every weapon creates a new battlefield. Do you believe future wars will be won by stronger weapons, or by the systems that connect them together?